Welcome to Podula Rasa. I'm David Blank.
And I'm Jimesh.
This is a podcast about finding something in nothing. Welcome to Fragment 2 of the Thom Williams Experience. This podcast continues to evolve as it focuses itself through the thought and actions of many. In a very real way, it's blossoming into a most unusual and beautiful flower. Jim and I are building a collection of interviews. So many of you have reached out with thoughts and expressions. You're willing to chat about Thom either through email, phone, or Zoom. And we are so thankful for all of you. Currently, we're focused on collection. Some of these interviews will be incorporated into thematic podcasts to be released over time, comparing experiences, stories, and feelings about our shared legacy, something which originated in this context from Thom Williams. I am humbled by the outpouring of love, frankly, from so many of you. I know that I'm not a polished podcaster, and yet many of you have been so very kind to my part in this. Thank you so very much for that. Over the weekend, I got a chance to chat with my longtime friend, Mark Christaldi, again, after our fantastic exchange a week ago, and my fail at not recording it. But, like most things in life, it turned out to be fortuitous, leading to Fragment 1.5, and that, in my mind, was needed. It stands on its own as part of this journey. What we ended up with was much better. So thank you, Mark. This podcast is focused on his thoughts and insights on Thom, and the podcast itself. It stands on its own as a beautiful, shining high point across the spectrum of Thom's legacy. Mark shares his thinking that he was an outsider, but the truth is quite different, and it really shines through. We hope that you will resonate with his thoughts.
I told my wife this morning, it's like a job. I'm like getting so much more out of it than money could ever give.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I have some a couple of bands that I love that I've loved for like 35 years, and it's interesting. You end up like, especially on Facebook, if you join a group that's dedicated to those bands, you end up, really thinking about a stranger a lot more than you should. Like, it's kind of weird, but there's a weird name band called Prefab Sprout, and the lead guy, he's, like a lot of people think of him as like a Gershwin or a McCartney or, whatever. He's really acclaimed, but kind of reclusive, and it's just interesting, like these people that just affect your life. It's so interesting, like how grown men should be doing something else, like mowing the grass or whatever, but you think about these people. Now, in your case, it really was a true mentor.
Well, I think to a degree, he served in that. In a way, we all serve each other in that way.
Yeah.
But thinking about this guy who, like, he said it himself, like, everybody always puts me on a pedestal. Like,
that's interesting.
It's because he did it better somehow, I guess, than other people, or more uniquely, maybe.
And that's probably also, I'm not saying that he taught, I don't believe at all he taught out of ego, but, it's pretty cool when you're like the teacher rock star, that's a pretty cool gig,
Yeah, he embraced it.
Yeah, he embraced it. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's nothing to be ashamed of there, because he was using it for good. I'm the oddest person you'll interview, because it's only in like this weird backwards way that I even realize that, I have something with him.
Well, that's okay. And that's one of the things that I love about you, Mark. So,
okay. Thank you. When I listened to the podcast, I thought, what an honor it is to be thought of so highly, to make such an impact, and to leave a legacy and be so fondly remembered. I don't think much about legacy besides what I'm instilling in my children. A friend of mine was surprised when she saw a jar of money in her kitchen, and on the outside it said, "For legacy." And she thought, we have a legacy? It was her husband saving for a Subaru legacy. I like the struggle I heard to understand what another person's influence is on a person. What made them special? What was that spirit that affected you? What keeps them alive in our memory? I felt very unworthy to say anything about Thom, because the truth is I was in a very strange, but maybe also very normal place in high school. I got to 10th grade and I was just lost. Then came 11th grade, same thing. To me, I felt a ghost, and Thom was just a part of the fabric of a place where I didn't fit in. So I don't have the memories and sayings and stories of him that you and others do. But it turns out I have one memory from that time that became a part of my life story, the story I tell sometimes to others, and that goes directly back to Thom. I felt lost, but I was seeking. I was like Basho, sick on a journey. Like him, something was dying in me. I was withering and wandering. That seeking had a conclusion in 12th grade. By then, I had enrolled in a private school 1,100 miles away and had left Pennsylvania on a Greyhound bus. Something was about to be born again. Where Thom comes in is the journal he required we keep in 11th grade. I only remember one thing I wrote in it, but it was that one thing I was seeking and the one thing I ultimately found. I believe I wrote it multiple times. It turned out it was a part of a journey that would take me so many miles away. So it revealed something really important to me about my life. So for me, Thom's influence had to do with journaling and journey, both a spiritual journey and a physical one. I realized that when you give a person an assignment like writing or an art assignment, the gift and revelation is really in the doing, not in the output. It's in the exploring. It becomes a place of discovery. And I believe that's the magic he brought for you. He asked you to discover something about yourself, and you are still doing that in this podcast. You are journaling and discovering. In show 1, you said, for a long time, I felt like I had something to say. But I think what is really happening here is that in journaling, we end up listening to ourselves. It turns out there's something we need to say to ourselves, to hear, to listen to from deep within. We need to hear from ourselves. I heard a lot of regret in your podcast. Regret is a funny thing because even though we set out to avoid it, it finds us. We all have regret. But I think if we did this discovery and self-listening and dialogue, challenged ourselves more and listened to what our souls are saying, we'd have less regret and many other blessings. We'd hear that the girl we're dating isn't right for us, or whatever the situation we're in had a solution, maybe an obvious one that may not be as obvious when it stays only rolling around in our head. But getting it out is where magic happens. It moves us past the idea to more concrete realities. We'd listen to the yearning of our hearts and soul. It's spiritual work. It's like haiku, like the process of writing the poetry of your life. I think Thom knew that. It's like you said, it's in launching that we find meaning, and it's likely to go somewhere good. There's something about starting, about writing out our thoughts and feelings, and doing it with some discipline, even maybe forcing ourselves. It ends up that it does more than capture everyday life, to remember what you are doing, thinking and feeling, or to collect ideas and observations. It captures your inner life too, the soul, if you'll listen. So you say this is a podcast about finding something in nothing, but I think it's a podcast about the process of finding much inside of you by expressing it. I think it's like the Peter Gabriel song, Digging in the Dirt, where he says, I'm digging in the dirt to find the places I got hurt, open up the places I got hurt. The more I look, the more I find. So in the end, I think I have discovered that our legacy that lives on, what makes a person inspiring and influential, what makes them mean so much to us and keeps a person alive into our present, is that they know something about the soul and they open that up to you. They push you towards your soul. And that's not a process or a place one arrives at that is inconsequential. That's the most important work we'll do. So like the hawk, they are best described as a guide. Yes, even a spirit guide, because that thing they've kindled in you is your very spirit. The last entry on Celebrating Thom Williams' Facebook page says, I found myself responding to an email today with a promise to contemplate and ponder in great detail, which is straight out of the Thom Williams phrase book. And I think that's what's happening here, Dave.
Beautiful. I think you're right. He touched on so many important things there. I mean, the idea, this is like an ongoing legacy.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, so many people are waking up to it and like in tuning. It's amazing.
I think that's the very definition of legacy, is that you get to live on in others. And that's what's happened for his life. And what a special thing, having already passed, but your spirit is living on in others.
That's right. Memories being blessings.
Yeah. And I think he invested in people and he celebrated people. And I think that makes something really special blossom inside of people.
Yeah, I agree. I find that I try to set some sort of an example for my kids that's related to those very principles.
Mm.
To try to show them. I mean, I screw up plenty, but I try to show them through that screwing up and being humble and
Mm-hmm.
and knowing when to apologize.
Mm-hmm.
That they're on that same path that I'm on. I might be the dad, but they're people too.
And I think that touches on another thing about Thom that I think was a big part of his life, and that he was vulnerable and he shared himself. And when we mess up and we're willing to say I'm sorry, or just allow people to see every side of our person. And he did that through sharing time with people in the editing room and in classrooms and playing guitar. He didn't just kind of come in and give you his best and hide the rest.
Right.
He was willing to share himself and to be vulnerable and to be transparent with people about who he was.
Yeah, and also non-judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about a time when I was playing guitar with him in the high school, and I said something really, really awful. And I don't know where it came from, but we were talking about somebody, and I made this comment, and he just looked at me, and he just said, "Ski, you do not mean that." And in that moment, I knew, like, he was completely right. I didn't know why I would have said such a horrible thing. But the thing was, he never mentioned it again. It's like he didn't hold it against me. It was just like he pointed it out and said, "That's just not cool." And he knew that I knew that he was right, and that was it. It was over.
Yeah.
We never talked about it again. There's other people in my life that I can tell you they hold grudges forever, or even if it's not about them, if you just had the wrong opinion about something, you're like evil, and they won't let you live it down.
Mm-hmm. And you had already built a trust with him.
Yeah.
Again, because he had invested in you and he'd shown you in different ways, probably up till that point, that he had wisdom that was worthy of your attention. And so when he sort of lowered the boom, you were like a child with him, and he was a good parent or a good older brother, and he was right, and that corrected your path. And so that's a really good thing. And just like children, we're always looking for where the boundaries are and where the right path is. And he was a person that seemed to know where the right path was, and he was he could nudge using different techniques to get people onto a path. And even this journaling and podcasting, it's a path. It's like a path of discovery. And I think one of his greatest gifts was probably that he knew enough about himself, and he knew enough about this process of walking correctly on a path, on a specific kind of path that would open up one's life to themselves. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts, Dave.
Thank you.
It's funny. I really do tell that. I often say, I remember journaling, and I remember this one sort of thought, and then I hadn't really, and of course I do remember the assigner of that journal, and I've never done it again.
Yeah.
And that's something I think is really special about what you're doing with the podcasting, is you've started a digital journal.
I think you're right. I was actually thinking, and I find myself thinking about this frequently, actually, as this is growing and turning into something else. I wonder, where does it go? It doesn't seem like it's going to just peter out. And I wouldn't say it's like a movement or anything, but there's enough people out there that it's like awakened something in people, and they're down with it. They're into it. And where does it ultimately go, and where would I want it to? Where does nobody's really driving the ship. I mean, Jim and I guess sort of are, but I don't even know where I want it to go. Like, or where, if I even did want it to go. What, do you know what I mean? Or is that just nebulous?
No, it's about introspection, and it reminds me of something I saw just yesterday from Fred Rogers. He said, "Our society is much more interested in information than wonder, in noise rather than silence." And I feel that we need a lot more wonder and a lot more silence in our lives.
Yeah.
And so that while a podcast is not about specifically about silence, obviously you're using your voices, but in essence, you're practicing a kind of introspection, again, that journaling gives, and so you're hearing yourselves. It is about talking and hearing, but the gift is really ultimately to yourselves, to whoever does this process. Like, it was a gift for me to unpack what he had meant in my life, and
Right.
and that's sort of the present there.
Well, there's a Buddhist saying that the path is the goal.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what it is for me. And
Yeah.
I was talking to my daughter the other day, and she's very interested in psychology, and she's got a plan. Like, she's going to go to college and study that, and she knows, like, pretty much how she wants almost like her career to go at this point. And she's 13.
Mm.
Well, what if that doesn't work? And I said, well, sometimes there are roadblocks, and ultimately everybody fails in the end anyway. But in the meantime, you can definitely plan for success, but maybe instead of having the ultimate goal in the back of your head, have the system to get there, and then and focus on the system and not the goal.
I think that's great, because again, like, that's what I think Thom was telling us to do, is to use this, you could call it artificial system, but journaling is not a natural thing for most people, probably, and or starting a podcast, but it's a system that puts you on a specific path, or a kind of path, and you don't know where it's going, but yeah, it's the system. That's a great thought, Dave.
Well, it seems to work.
Yeah, that's a very a person who's really comfortable with the ambiguity of life.
Well, I mean, my thinking is, if you can't do it and want to do it, then what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, because a lot of people do things that they don't necessarily even want to do. And I mean, sometimes you have to, and that's okay. But if you have the option, it's better. You help humanity better if you exercise it.
And you only, Thom's gone, and you only get one try at this. And so, going all the way back to legacy, he poured himself into others, and he's living on, and so that's doing it that way, it actually gives you a life, and that mean that by that I mean a life here, like you've just referenced, and then a life that lives on. Like, you get almost like two lives if you'll take the time to do it that way, to do it from the heart.
And maybe that's why he also said that everything matters. Everything you do matters. Because it resonates into the future.
Right.
Even the future without you, it resonates. If you're a real bad person, then that resonates too.
Right.
Well, I have to tell you, I feel like this conversation is almost better than the last one.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad. No, it's great, and I appreciate it. It's I was a little surprised at myself for not kind of realizing what the gift was that he had given to me, and this is the reason my degrees are in art and design, so I've been given lots of assignments that opened up thinking for me, but I never realized like sort of the pure, I don't know, the pure gift it is to do that to somebody, just to give them an assignment. It's almost like you know something they don't know, and just in the doing, you arrive at really interesting places. And he's the first person that I can ever remember that actually did that for me, and it ended up being a part of my life story.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed Fragment 2 of the Thom Williams Experience. More is coming and is in the works. Thank you to everybody who's reached out and contributed ideas and thoughts. We're in the process of conducting more interviews and organizing everything. Please continue sharing those thoughts and memories. We would also like to invite you to contribute to Thom's memory through a contribution to the Thom Williams Memorial Scholarship Fund. You can do that by writing a check and sending it along to the principal at the Marple Newtown High School, 120 Media Line Road, Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, 19073. The address is also on our website. Thanks very much, and we'll see you soon.